buscarmos um lugar, como nós tínhamos pensado num que na última hora, né, não se confirmou, a Thaís aqui me liga e fala assim, olha, eu acho que segundo tudo aí que você está falando, Otto e tal, a gente podia fazer no quintal orgânico, né, dos orgânicos. E aí eu falei, olha, faz sentido, vamos lá, vamos fazer um negócio diferente. E chego aqui e aí recebo a informação dos novos amigos antigos do Otto, que isso tem uma conexão com a infância dele, né, que também foi, tem uma história aí que a gente até já vai convidá-lo para nos contar, que tem uma relação direta com quintanda de orgânicos. Então, assim, está em casa. Então, se sinta em casa, essa foi a nossa intenção, de recebê-lo, né, aqui com nossos amigos, todos grandes amigos, cada um com a sua forma de ver e de se manifestar no mundo. E eu acredito que teremos um belo encontro aqui nessa cozinha. Por favor.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, and thank you for having me here. In fact, I am feeling at home because it's nice being back here, seeing a few familiar and many new faces. People I haven't met yet and yet feel connected with. So we just had a conversation before we started, and the question, so it was about what's going on and kind of activities, movements, and then kind of you guys were referring to the we, right? We did this, we did that, and then kind of after the election, and I then asked, so who is the we, right? So, and so that's actually an interesting, so that, brought us into another interesting question. So there's a we, there's like two dimensions of we. One is kind of the we, the guys that we already know, that we have been working with, or somehow feel aligned with, some whatever, values or so. But then there's another we, which is people we haven't even met with. And yet, when you connect with them, you feel there is kind of that kind of field of possibility. There's this field of kind of that, so we could, there's very quickly, easily, painlessly, a connection, a field of connections, some kind of field of possibility. Yes, we have not worked in the past, but we could have, right? We could have. So it's just, so that's, I guess that's kind of a feeling, kind of this. So what's the relationship between the smaller we and the larger we? And how can we extend the first we, which is the we that we know from our journey of the past, to the larger we, which is the we that maybe now is sitting in the room here, but even the we of those people we haven't even met with. But somehow, people who live in other corners of the world and who basically carry the same seed of aspiration, of humanity, of connection or attempted connection with them, that we also are connected with. So that's basically the question that brings me, and that's kind of why I feel at home here. So is it just so should I make pauses for translations? No. No. And so I assume we haven't really planned out the session that much. So I just, is it okay I make a few introductory remarks and then we enter the conversation? Because the alternative would be just to have a quick introductory round. Yeah. Should we do that?
So sorry for being late. Good afternoon. My name is Rubens Born. I'm the Deputy Director of VTC, this Institute for Development and Peace. And beyond that, I have other roles, being one of the coordinators of the Brazilian NGOs and social movements for environment and development. It's a broad coalition created 20 years ago to organize Brazilian civil society for the Earth Summit.
Good afternoon, I'm Edgar Gouveia. I'm a Shocker Fellow, social entrepreneur. And exactly now, for the next 4 years, I put myself in service of a global game. So it's called The Call. And we're gonna change the world in 4 years by playing a global game. So our target is to reach 2 billion people in 4 years, playing the role of changing our behaviors in the planet. Oba.
More accepted than 2 billion weed.
2 billion weed. We are more, but let's start with 2 billion, not billion. So.
My name is William Medeiros. I work at SENAC. SENAC is an educational institution here in Brazil, in São Paulo and all other different states. And I work in a social program called NGOs Network that are trying to connect the NGOs that work in the communities to improve their lives and make actions and activities with social folks together. That's very neat.
Olá, meu nome é Lourdes Alves. Eu também trabalho no SENAC,
We work together in the same institution,
que é uma instituição educacional.
an education institution,
Trabalho com educação profissionalizante.
professional education, and
Nessa instituição eu trabalho com projetos de desenvolvimento
she works
local
with a local development project,
e também com fomento de redes sociais,
social networks,
de
improvement
conexão entre as
connections
pessoas.
between people and organizations and non-governmental organizations.
Também trabalho na associação
with a-
Palestrante,
Palestrante,
como
Association,
docente, em projetos
teacher,
especiais,
and special projects
com tecnologias de convivência. Vamos dizer assim.
convivence technologies and new technologies.
E eu queria dizer também que estou contente de estar aqui, de
She's
poder
very happy to be here.
compor nesse grupo para ouvir um pouco do que você está
To join this
trazendo.
group and to be here together with you.
Essa convivência me agrada. Obrigada.
Good afternoon. My name is Renato Tonin. I try to be an urban planner and I work at SENAC, also the same institution, and we share some projects in this field, and I work in an NGO that deals with water resources management, and I'm very glad to be here.
Meu nome é Basileu, nós já nos apresentamos, né? Vamos junto para cá, do Instituto Democracia e Sustentabilidade.
Meu nome é Marcela e eu trabalho com formação de redes também, política e casas. E atualmente estou no Instituto Sincronicidade.
Meu nome é Rangel, também sou do Instituto Sincronicidade. Também trabalho no projeto das casas que a gente chama de uma rede de anfitriões pela sustentabilidade.
Meu nome é Bia, eu sou chefe de cozinha e eu tenho um restaurante que tem um conceito de receber as pessoas para desenvolverem projetos sociais, ecológicos e sustentabilidade, e tenho bons amigos e por isso estou aqui hoje.
E o nome do restaurante é?
Otto.
Hi, my name is Wilson Nobre. I'm a professor in Fundação Getúlio Vargas in the innovation area, and I'm here because I met Otto from a long time ago, and I'm here to listen
for a little bit.
Silvana, Fundação Getúlio Vargas, in innovation and all that, and I'm your student.
My name is Pedro Leitão. I'm a manager of a not-for-profit organization. Arapiau.
Hello, my name is Marina. It's all I can say in English.
That's all.
Eu trabalho na Circular com processos participativos e conversas significativas.
I'm Deborah. I write, I'm a journalist, I like social networks, I like people, I like circles, especially circles, and I work with circle dance also. That's it.
I'm Alan Dubner. I'm from Seoul, Brazil. I work with social media, digital communication, and I'm in this project of new politics and trying to change things and try to play the game for 2 billion people with Edgardo.
I'm Deborah Degenchen. I worked for 20-some years in international finance, and I lived in New York for 15 years. My father studied at the MIT. And last year I decided to quit and to use all my talents to do something useful. It's not just to make money for rich people, so sustainability. And right now I am working on incubating new technologies and possibly putting together a new project in organics and basically looking into businesses that make sense, and I'd like to help in the political arena as well.
I'm Amanda, and I'm working with a lot of things. I'm the call on the game, and I'm designing another game for an NGO, and I work with graphic facilitation and designing some educational processes. I think it's pretty much that. And post-graduation is like that it's called. And sustainable development on the hub with Alexandra, which can be really, how can I say that? How can I qualify that? Huh? Actually, I'm not finding the word even in Portuguese, but it's very innovative. It's very, I don't know how to say that, out of the box. So I can speak after. Good.
My name is Carolina. I'm a journalist. I am assistant editor for Página 22 magazine, which is a pioneer publication in the field of sustainability here in Brazil.
I'm Eduardo. I am a development practitioner. I work with organizational development and innovation in politics, and mainly at Vitae Civilis with Rubens, where I'm currently working more at. I'm also a member of other organizations here, like IVS. I'm a member of the member, and other projects here. I collaborate with a few.
I'm Rosa Alegria. I'm a futurist. I thank so much Alexandra to invite me. I've read your books, and I deal with foresight projects and trying to be more and more in the present. So I brought your book here just for you to sign. So I've been studying many of your readings, as well as Peter Seng's. So it's an honor to be here.
So I am Alexandra.
So thank you very much I thought that gives me a little better sense of the we coming together here tonight. And I thought I maybe start a little bit with my personal background and then talk about an ongoing research project that I'm involved in and that I guess all of us are involved in, which is the current transformation of capitalism. And so I actually grew up on an organic farm, so that's another reason why to feel at home here. And so that was my parents some 50 plus years ago kind of converted that from conventional to organic, and there was like I don't know 10, 15 years of low yields and crisis and no positive feedback. You're ostracized and nothing works and just downhill, and for some reason they kept believing in it. And then actually it was through the processing and the direct marketing and learning from the mistakes that slowly it started to work. And then actually the main shift was during the early 1970s, suddenly young people becoming interested in that. And so it was not only two crazy people, but it was some more people interested in that. And today it's kind of a model farm in Germany, kind of recognized, often featured kind of through government or public television or so. But you never understand the story when you look from the end. Kind of, but most of the time that I grew up, it was either a struggle or it just started to slowly attract more people and more energy. And so early on I became appreciative of that if you're in a journey of profound innovation and change, there's a lot of things that are thrown into your way. And it is a long journey, and you and your own generation may see the results, or maybe it's the next one. And I think it somehow relates to our situation now. Well, the moment I politically woke up a little bit, so that was late 1970s, the anti-nuke movement. So there was the Green Movement, the anti-nuke movement in Germany. They were building a major atomic power plant not too far from the farm. So that was kind of a major civic versus big business, big government battle that went going on with hundreds of thousands of people going on illegal demonstrations, major clashes. And that's a little bit where I woke up, and I still remember kind of in the early days of the Green Movement, there were all these discussions. Should we or shouldn't we become a party? That was 1979, I think, was the first election, the European election. It was the first time ever that a Green Party came into the parliament. And there was like, grassroots movement versus, too much compromising, getting like diverted in your energy and becoming part of the problem, really. And so that was 40 years ago. 40? No, 30. 30 plus years ago, 32. And today, if you look back, so the jury is out, right? You could say, well, what really did the Green Party do? I mean, so given the initial aspirations, so was there a profound transformation, along the four organizing ideas of society? Certainly not. On the other hand, by going mainstream, moving into the parliaments, moving into government, shaping environmental legislation, shaping energy, today
Germany is one of the centers of the green economy with energy efficiency, solar, wind, and so on. So a lot was due to legislation that the Green Party was instrumental. So there's also that part of the story, yet you can hardly make the argument kind of that the Green Party today is really the embodiment of our aspirations back then, right? But it's a small piece. That was the next thing that I experienced was East-West, so early 1980s. When I finally, so I refused to go to army, so civil service, so that, first they send you to school, and it takes forever, and then, you do army or civil service, and it also takes forever, and then finally it's your own life. And I still remember that moment, right? I still remember that moment. Now I'm in control, right? Enough, and so I chose to go to Berlin for two reasons. One is it was the West Berlin, right? It was back in the one, it was the center of counterculture, and the other one was it was like it had interesting, people, communities, lifestyle, and universities. So I then entered the Free University Berlin in West Berlin, and that was probably one of the biggest disappointments in my whole life, because I really thought that I would learn something about the university. So I have been part of all these debates over all these years, and and I thought kind of that would be a place where you would go to the roots of things, and where you would really kind of explore to a deeper level of knowing, and not kind of stop the debate or the conversation halfway, and where you would also kind of take that deeper knowing and move that and kind of explore that into the context of society and societal renewal. But what I saw was not quite that, so it was that's why it was a real disappointment and awakening, disillusionment, I should say. But there was one guy who actually embodied what I had been looking for, and he was a peace researcher. He still is. His name is Johan Galtung, a Norwegian peace researcher, and he was a visiting professor there, and he was living a science that wasn't kind of residing within academia, but that moved out into the world and had kind of in engaging with the real change and conflict processes kind of created that knowledge. And that was not about describing what's the laws according to which society is operating, but exploring the condition of transformation, right? Science as identifying under what conditions we can transform society. And most of these conditions, of course, so in social science, all laws that we find, or invariances, only work under the assumption of certain third variables being constant, right? And if we change these third variables, the whole law is changing, right? The whole kind of pattern is changing. And the primary, of course, candidate for this law is consciousness, right? Kind of awareness, which is basically what I'm doing today, kind of try to investigate how, when we change our awareness, we can change the way social fields are operating, face to face, but also in the large society. So that was back then, and then I went to another university. I realized I couldn't, study all these things, really the whole society that was that I was interested in. But I had to pick just one thing and go a little deeper. And I picked economics. The reason was that I believe today, if you change society but you do not change business and economics, then you haven't changed the heart of society today. the heart of society is kind of how the economy works, and everything else is kind of more an outer. So I kind of, in order to understand that, kind of what really makes the economy work, which I didn't know, of course, I picked that. Then, we had to select a company because it was like a new educational thing. We had to work and practice. I only had one criteria: no defense. So no bad things. Okay, give me any company. No bad. So I teamed up with a small company.
What do you mean with no defense?
No defense business.
The setor de bomba, de
no defense business. Right? So no tanks, no this, no that. Okay, so I joined a company that does shoelaces, right? Sounds pretty unsuspicious, right? Until I had a few months I have been working there. Then I see this olive greenish thing running down, and I ask another guy, "What's that?" "Oh, that's for the German army." What? So that was kind of for the parachutes, these strings. And anyway, so I'm just sharing that as a story, kind of that my attempt, staying on the clean side of the world didn't quite work out, and so I had to realize kind of that it's all interconnected anyway, and yes, I can make choices, but I cannot be like separate. And then after I then went after my PhD. I went to MIT because I wanted to learn more a practical way of doing research. So I had written a big thesis, right? So you know what my brothers and siblings, what they said, well, it's like a phone book, right? So no one is ever reading it. It's like, it was on kind of the transformation of capitalism, but it was like abstract stuff, okay? So I could like say learning societies, this and that, but all of what I have been written was useless for those people who actually did these changes in the world, right? So it's academic. So it dawned on me that I needed to learn a new way of science, which is more moving out into reality, kind of more getting engaged. In order to learn that, I went to Boston, to MIT, and joined a research group. I was interested in the transformation of society. No one was interested there, because they all worked with organizations. Organization learning was the topic, and it was only companies, no government, no NGOs, none of that. Okay, then companies, all right, let's start there. And then, so I did that for a few years, and and then became part of a story that, helped me also to then broaden the focus a little bit towards bringing in civil society and also some governmental organizations, and moving from organizational learning to larger systems and societal learning. And it was really only after the crisis in 2008, the Lehman Brothers, the financial crisis where almost the world economy collapsed, that I started, or I felt I could actually return to my original intention, which is not just doing organizational stuff, but addressing the issue of transforming capitalism, and addressing the issue of how not only small structures need to evolve, but also larger structures. So, for example, in talking with Ashoka people, right, I learned that of these wonderful, so over all these years, wonderful projects have been created, but very few of this kind of thousands of projects and social enterprises have gone to scale, right? They tend to, well, your case is really interesting because it already starts at a major level, right? But usually kind of the whole field of social entrepreneurship that I guess we all are connected with in some ways is wonderful, and it's also staying at the margin to some degree. So I always felt, okay, so that's one piece, but we also need, there's another piece of the we that's sitting inside the big institutions. And so through my work in companies, I learned, in fact, kind of, there is no such thing as a company, right? It's people, right? It's people. And there are like different coalitions of people, different generations of people. They have different aspirations, right? And there are many people who would love to connect to the we, the other we, which is the social entrepreneurship guys, you know, on a grassroots level, become part of that movement because they are bored to death by what they experience. I teach a class at MIT, or I taught one this fall, 80 people, 40 young MBAs, like, you know, your 20-somethings, and then 40 mid-career executives, so who in age maybe in their early 40s or so, late 30s, come in for a year, and, you know, they take. Now they come from all over the place, all over the world, not just the US, and they all basically, and it wasn't the case like 10 years ago, but now they all basically say the same thing, which is this: the higher I get in my company, the more uninspired I am. Right? So that the faster I advance, the less inspired I am by what the system asks me to do. What do I do? So so that's kind of that's the early stage of a burnout, of course, right? It's so so I felt kind of, so I met like people in these larger governmental or business systems, and I also met people more on the NGO and grassroots level. And kind of the question really that I then started to return to after 2008 is, what really is the evolution of this larger picture just all about? Which is not just new projects, new social enterprises, but how can we, what is the bigger story of transformation that we are a part of? Now you can call that capitalism, you can call that with some other words, doesn't really matter, but it's really also reflected on, you know, of these stories that I have been a part of that were, say, to some degree successful, or that I studied. What you often see is it's not sustainable, right? It works for a while, and then, you know, after a while the system strikes back. Or they don't really go to scale. They move to a certain level and then they hit the system's boundary. Now, and a lot of these systems boundaries has to do with capital markets, for example, right? So I saw enough of that. So that's kind of what why I a year or two ago then came back to my original research question. So how does learning and evolution look like at this larger level? And so if I very much, you know, and that would be, I would be interested in your views that kind of when we enter the discussion a little later. But I feel that there is, so I almost feel like I'm participating in two different worlds right now. So I'm living almost in two different worlds. One is characterized by three numbers: 1.5, 2.5, 3.0. And I'm sure you know two of these numbers. 1.5 is we live, so our current economy lives on a 1.5 planet footprint. So each year we kind of consume 1.5 planet Earth. So we operate a 1.5 planet economy in a 1.0 planet world, and the contradiction translates kind of in all the ecological destruction that we are aware of. 2.5, so that's the ecological divide. 2.5 is referring to the social divide and means 2.5 billion people living below the poverty line. A number that, in spite of all the successes we had in a few places, and this is one, and in Asia a few other places, has not changed much. So still 2.5 billion people living below the poverty line. So basically we have an economy that isn't really working for very many of us. And then the third one, 3.0, is the spiritual divide. And the spiritual divide manifests in a number. So it's like the inner split, the inner disconnect, right? Not just disconnecting to the outer, but to the inner. And the inner disconnect we see through rapidly increasing burnout. I don't know whether that's true here. In most other places I go, that's true, certainly for the US. Burnouts, depression, right? Depression going way up, particularly, and then third one is, according to WHO, and those numbers are for the year 2000, 3 times as many people have killed themselves in suicide than have been killed through war and homicide and violent conflict.
Pode-me traduzir isso em português? Sorry, just to translate it.
Yeah.
3 vezes mais pessoas se suicidaram versus qualquer outro tipo de morte.
Não, morte por violência, quer dizer,
Não, morte por violência.
Né, você tem uma morte por qualquer tipo de violência, seja guerra ou assassinato, e que o suicídio é 3 vezes maior, de um número que já é grande, né?
Isso é um dado da OMS, da Organização Mundial de Saúde.
So,
Da WHO. Those data from the World Health Organization.
Official data. WHO,
Yeah.
2000. Right. So in spite of all the violence going on, 3 times as many people kill themselves than are being killed through others. And so it's violence against nature, it's violence against others, the marginalized, and it's violence against ourselves in a variety of forms. So that's basically the bigger context that organizing and that institution and that all kind of social transformation or institutional development, organization development takes place. And the questions that we face as a generation of change makers today at the beginning of the century is, how do we deal with that? So how do we reinvent our institutions of business, of government, of civil society, of education, of media in addressing these issues? And I think it will force us. So what is, so if you step back and say, well, let me put it that way. So what have we done? Because these problems are not new, right? So what have we done the last 100 years? What was the 20th century's response to this? Well, for each problem we create a ministry, and sometimes we split it up to several ministries, and we create a cluster of NGOs, right? Foundations, single purpose, journals, academic departments, career tracks, conferences, all kind of addressing, these either these problems or kind of subparts of these problems. And what we probably have learned over the past 100 years is that addressing these problems one issue at a time isn't working. Because as long as we approach kind of the ecological divide, the social divide, the spiritual divide, one problem at a time, we are not getting anywhere. We're just scratching the surface. Now, what is sustainable development? It is 2 out of the 3, right? It's the ecological and it's kind of the social economic. It usually is missing the 3rd dimension. And and then we have, so we can just go around and we see examples. So that's progress. So sustainable development is progress. Yet, it still kind of needs to be taken to another level. So we really have to rethink our kind of fundamental institutions in the economy and in the political process and in the educational process, in order to develop systems and solutions that address kind of these three divides simultaneously. And a lot, of course, has to do with the economy, because you could say, what do these problems all have in common? Well, they are basically, a result of how we organize the economy, right? That's one way of seeing it. Then you could also say there's also something wrong, probably, with the democratic, what we call democracy today. And of course, we could say similar things to the educational process. So stepping back, I would say there are probably like three big questions that we have as a generation that we need to address. We need to, the first question is how to reinvent the economy so that we develop basically an economy that works for all, right? And is addressing these three divides in a positive way. The second question is how to reinvent democracy, what we call democracy. Since just, the basic problem in the economy is that we have a capital process, that we have financial capital. We have $170 trillion floating kind of around the globe, looking for profitable investment, right? And and what's happening? Kind of, they go. This is going someplace, and what is then happening? The next bubble, right? So it's a bubble economy. It's designed to create one bubble after another. That's kind of what the business model is. Yet all of us working in the real economy, in the real social entrepreneurship, we are lacking capital, right? And that's what's lacking. So that's what is part of what would help us to bring some of these projects to scale. Access to capital that is not blind to the externalities, the social ecological externalities, but aware of them. So the question how to reinvent the economy has a lot to do with the disconnect of capital with kind of the real economy. And if we now go to the second question, how to reinvent democracy. Well, we have, of course, the same thing happening with government, right? So we have basically today a public decision-making and public planning that's hijacked by organized interest groups, or special interest groups. Now, the banking sector is a particularly bad one, particularly influential one, particularly in the US. The financial oligarchy that is, basically ruling the country. But it's not the only group, right? It's basically organized interest groups that are crowding out everyone else who is not organized because they are marginalized, because they are large numbers. So big number groups have much bigger problems to self-organize kind of in their collective interest. Or because they are not yet born, kind of the future generation. Right? It's all shifted over to them. And then the third question, of course, is how to reinvent education and learning and kind of how to access our. So, and many of us are probably dealing. So I want to. What I noticed about our check-in, kind of with New Democracy, is it called?
Yeah, one of the names.
Yeah, New Democracy in terms of what I understood from our earlier conversation, democracy without government, which is basically re-empowering civil society. We need, of course, the same thing on the governmental, on the business side as well, right?
Not the new democracy, new politics.
New politics, yeah. So that took a long time.
Sorry, just.
So we need to. So we have abstract. So we have system realities that have been disconnected, right? Just like the capital, the financial capital, got disconnected. And there's no intelligence built in. How kind of the financial capital is really being in service of the real economy, in service of the social entrepreneurship, in service of collective creativity. What's the essence of capital? It's essentially creativity applied to well-being. So that's the essence of capital, is not money, it's creativity, which then kind of results into money at some later point. What we have today is kind of that there's this abstraction, a decoupling kind of the whole financial capital bubble. It's a, creating a bubble economy that we need to reconnect with, and to be, in order to be in support of, with where the real creativity is in society, and kind of link. And the same, of course, is we need to do in the field of democracy, right? Politics with no government. So for me, the way I'm hearing that, so that may be a little different how you intend to use that, but the way I hear that is that we basically need to reinvent politics outside of the established institutions of politicians, right? So we need to link it back to the community, back to civil society, back to tri-sector engagement and collaboration, because and find ways where we bring in all these voices, because the phenomenon of organized interest groups and disruption is always the same. You have special interests that basically have backroom deals at the expense of everyone else who has not been part of these backdoor conversations. Now, this is illegal in many countries, but it's legalized in many others. It doesn't make a difference, right? I happen to live in a country where corruption is legalized, right? There's no limit how you can pay politicians. You don't even have to disclose it now. So making it legal doesn't make it right. And it's a deep crisis, and it's a crisis that's seen today because what we call democracy in the US evidently creates results that are much inferior to what China is doing, right? They don't call it parliamentary democracy, but they have a way of including the different voices, of having decision-making on a collective level and then implementing and addressing the issues, which is far more effective than what we are seeing in our institutional paralysis in the West. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why there is today a much more widespread awareness of maybe we have to rethink the way kind of democracy and parliamentary and indirect democracy is working, and we have to review it, kind of taking into account new technologies, kind of the new realities that we are part of. So I want to give, so that's basically, I'm more really talking about the background. I want to maybe share one, I'm just coming from Indonesia. And so what I ended up doing then the last years is at some point I noticed, well, I was doing all this organization work, yet, and that was all nice and fine, but I got frustrated because that was like 5-6 years ago, because I realized that all the big societal problems are not within organizations, they're between organizations, they're between these silos. So how could I be helpful in creating like platforms where people work together across institutions and sectors? So one of them led to a project in Indonesia where over a period of 9 months we bring basically together young high potential leaders from civil society, government, and business. So they spent a week at MIT, and then we basically, we go through the new process that I have not been talking about, but we basically do kind of observation journeys, immersion journeys. Kind of the government people spend a few days in the life of the NGOs and vice versa. And so you kind of, you form small groups to get to know each other. You go to some hotspots of innovation, but also destruction, to be basically exposed to raw, unfiltered reality, and then you process these experiences. And Then, there's a retreat, there's like more deeper, reflection work. They dream up their projects, right? Tri-sector projects, and then they do it. With very little support, if any, right? And some of them, and it's not to solve the world, not to solve, it's just to learn. It's a platform where you can try out new things that you could not get away with just left alone in your own institution. Now, one of them, so what it surprised me in retrospect is that so let me before I before I move to the example, let me kind of put in another piece that really that has to do with the current transformation of capitalism. So let me just, that will be all. Then we move into the discussion. So this is, so I have been sharing the background, but I want to share one piece, one simple thought in a way, how in fact capitalism. Okay, so if a lot of the problems that we have is originated by the economy, so how does the economy evolve, if at all? And in reflecting on that, I came up with a very simple or simplistic really observation, which is the economy, right? The modern economy. What is modern economy? It's like economy that's based on distribution of labor, right? Where all the productivity comes in. And if in any kind of modern economy goes through stages, so it has a coordination problem, right? So we all work, everyone does something different, but how do you coordinate? And so the simple way of looking at the evolution of an economy is that the way we coordinate division of labor characterized economy is going through an evolution from basically simple to complex, like we do as individuals. So when you we as individuals, we go through evolutionary stages, right? Groups do, and so do economies. So that's basically the simple.
You're talking in a global level.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm talking about something that you can observe in any given economy today. And I'm saying it's basically a story. I'm simplifying, of course, because in reality, each context is different. So there's a little different. But what I'm saying is there is a main storyline, and the storyline goes through 4 chapters. Now there's a prologue, and the prologue is the communal stage, right? The pre-modern stage. So we will ignore that for now, but it's an important. And in most cases today, that's destroyed, right? It's already, by modernization. But so what's the first stage is centralized, state-based coordination. We have called that in Europe mercantilism. Karl Marx, in his theory, thought socialism followed capitalism, right? But it may in fact be the other way around, because if you look at what really happened in Eastern Europe is, first came socialism, and now comes capitalism. And what is socialism? It's one sector of society. It's basically government, state, nothing else, and centralized planning. Right, so that that works. So so that's an initial stage for setting in, building infrastructures and so on. And then, so that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the birth of the private sector, the birth of the market economy, the free market economy, the laissez-faire market economy. Now, because the government is good, but it's so static, it's so limiting, right? So you have the human creativity finds a new way, creating the private sector, creating the whole field of entrepreneurship, and huge growth, huge success, right? 2 sectors, public, private now, huge success, huge, rich wealth accumulation and huge, massive destruction, right? Poverty, environmental destruction, and the third problem is destruction of capital through the financial bubbles that are being created. What is the response? The response to these three problems leads to the third chapter, the 3.0 economy, which we call social market economy or stakeholder capitalism or whatever, but it's basically has to do with the rise of the third sector, which is the civic sector, the NGO sector, and basically organized, among others, right, in organized interest groups, kind of influencing the legislative process in a way to develop a regulative framework that reflects some of these negative, limits the negative and maybe, enables more positive externality. So that's the attempt. It worked domestically in a number of places, not in all places, but in a number of places throughout the 20th century. And so that's kind of the 3.0 economy that we have been living in lately. And it's hitting the wall right now. And it's hitting the wall nowhere more clear than in the collapse of the Copenhagen climate talks, than in Wall Street's successful intervention to prevent effective banking regulation from happening in Washington after 2008. Now, today, the same banks that caused the crisis are more powerful than before. They not only kind of got all the bailout with no conditions attached, which no other industry ever has, but they have a higher, their assets are much larger relative to the overall economy than before the crisis. And that means they're negotiating and power to basically blackmail government to do, to take over their incentives for excessive risk taking has only increased. So seeing how it's not 1%, it's 0.1%. How 0.1% is, creating legislation at the expense of 99.9% is an example that 3.0 is hitting the wall. Plus, all the global problems that we have, you cannot address kind of with these domestic, with this 3.0 economy. And that's why I believe the current crisis is a transitional crisis where we have the possibility to move into a 4.0 economy, which is basically three sectors working against each other to three sectors co-creating with each other. And co-creating what? They co-create basically the bridging of the three divides. Co-creating innovations not only in small pockets of systems, but innovations at the scale of the whole system. Now, what does it take to do that? It requires a profound shift in awareness on the side of all the stakeholders. And it is a journey, and that's what I have been and others have been, many of you, I guess, have been, applied a lot of time on. So it takes a journey that moves a system where everyone is driven by ecosystem awareness, optimizing my own institutional interests, to ecosystem awareness, which is having walked in the shoes of the others, particularly the most marginalized. How do we think together about innovations, right, that create an economy that works for all, basically? And that is inclusive of the three divides.
Can you just repeat this question, please?
How do we, so what are the learning environments that we have to create that enables kind of stakeholders in a system to move from ego to ecosystem awareness? Ecosystem awareness is I'm just representing and optimizing the interests of my own institution. And ecosystem awareness is having walked in the shoes of the most marginalized and the others, how can we together create innovations that change the system at the scale of the whole, rather than marginal improvements. So that's, I think that's the possibility. And since I believe we have entered an age of disruptive changes, so 2008 was just the beginning, and we all know you just need to add up 1.5, 2.5, 3.0, and you know what's coming. I mean, it's kind of the decade we are in will be full of disruptive changes. I personally believe there's nothing we can do about that. So that's coming anyway. That's all, it's way too late to. But what we can do about is, are you prepared or not? And 2008 is the perfect example of not being prepared. In 2008, the financial industry was on its knees. Obama, with the right intention, right, and with kind of a different framework of economic thinking, really in understanding what it is that we need banks for, right? Banks are, in an economy, what the heart is for the human organism, right? The money is kind of the blood system, it circulates, and it has to move, not only like in parts of the body, but throughout the entire body, right? Now, what is, so a bank, that's why the heart really needs to operate in the interest of the whole organism, right? Keeping things flowing. Now, if you have like a heart that's driven by ecosystem awareness, what does the heart do? Keeping all the money, keeping all the profits for myself, which is how we have organized our banking system, which is kind of what kind of creates the bubbles in the, which creates kind of too much of blood in one part of the system and too little in the others, which is the whole field of social entrepreneurship, among others. So that's now that, but that's a different, it requires 4.0 economy requires us to rethink all the key categories of economic thought, which is what is capital really, right? And what is money really, and what do we need it for? What is labor, right? So the concept of labor that we have is 2.0 and 3.0, which is basically labor as a commodity. The problem with our economy is that the whole 2.0 stage, which is kind of the laissez-faire market economy, is based on a commodity fiction. It's based on that nature and labor and capital are commodities. What is a commodity? Commodity is something that I, produce in order to sell it. But a human being is not produced in order to be sold. Neither is Mother Earth. And neither is as I just explained, kind of the circulatory system, the money system. It's a common that we have that enables kind of economic activity. So 4.0 means we need to rethink the core concept of economic thought, among others the concept of capital, and then move it from, how does it operate in an ecosystem awareness, which is basically it's a commodity that you produce in order to maximize profit, right? Capital is, and economic activities is maximizing profit, towards a 4.0 mindset and framework in which kind of the generation of capital is not only the maximization of financial capital, but also kind of includes the natural, the human, the social, and the collective cultural, or you could say spiritual capital. Kind of all of that. So it needs, it requires us to kind of rethinking some of these basic categories. And so that's basically what I believe is necessary for this next stage, kind of that we need a framework, an evolved framework of economic activity that rethinks the economy from a 4.0 perspective, which is, with 4.0 I mean ecosystem awareness, awareness of the whole, of the well-being of the whole. Secondly, we need institutional. The next revolution needs to be an institutional one. When you look how capitalism evolved from 2.0 to 3.0, which is free market capitalism to a social market economy. It took decades of struggle, of fight. It didn't happen through a meditation retreat. It didn't happen through wishful thinking. It happened through decades of institutional struggle. You know, how did it start? Bismarck. Why did Bismarck, in the 1870s, kind of created the social security legislation? Because he wanted to prevent the revolution. So he wanted to kind of take the, the steam out of the socialist movement back then. So there, in other words, there was a lot of grassroots pressure going on that led to these institutional innovations, which is Social Security, Federal Reserve. The whole Federal Reserve system, is something that happened while reflecting on all the bubbles that kept kind of creating damage to the economy. And of course also the environmental and the legislation protecting the farmers and the environment and the labor legislation. So right now, so we have seen, it took a few decades to put these innovations in, and in our case, it will at least take a few years, right? I think, the history has been speeding up. So developments happen much faster today. So what took a long time in the past may happen very quickly in the next decade. But we need to, so the second thing is institutional innovations that basically bring together the right players that, if brought together, can look at the whole, the state of the whole system. And so it's basically the players that need each other in order to take action collectively, in order to transform the system. And usually, in any kind of system, education, health, and you name it, it always includes business and government and civil society. So we need to create these places, because today, our laws prevent that from happening. So it is like a pre-competitive space of collaboration where we develop collaborative intelligence. And the third one, of course, is that we need a social technology, a method that once you bring the right people together, takes them through a process that allows them to go through from ego to ecosystem awareness. Because we all have seen, like, okay, you bring all the right stakeholders together, and what do you see? Well, more of the same talk, right? More speeches that we already heard 100 times. It particularly happens when you bring together the top people, kind of organized interest groups. So you want to avoid those and those conversations. You want to bring more of the practitioners together, and you want to, that's the third thing. You want to use a process, that a method, a leadership or a social technology that allows a group to go through a process of becoming aware that moves me from my ecosystem awareness, which is my starting point. It's nothing bad, but it's just limited, to an awareness that is inclusive of the others. So those are the three things, and I think there is. So when I said, I never finished my sentence at the beginning when I said, well, I think I live in two worlds, right? And then I started about problem world, then 1.5 and so on. I never ended. So, but now I remember that. So there's another world. And another world is basically, sitting here in this room, among others. So if you look at the facts, 1.5, 2.5, 3.0, there are three options. You can be in denial, or you can become cynical, or you can become depressed. Right? So you close the eyes, you check out emotionally, or kind of on a will level, you really get depressed because it's just awful, right? But I'm neither of those things. So, and neither of us is. So in terms of the energy that we feel, that I feel, here and in many other places, is completely different. And that's the other world. And it's a world where a future that hasn't landed yet is already there. And that's the future that we can connect with. And kind of that is basically, when I said we need a method, we need a process, we need to kind of connect with that energy. It's possible. I think we all have seen it. And, you know, and we created it. It's not like a miracle, you know, that happens. It is a miracle also, but you can, you know, you can create methodic conditions where those miracles are much more likely to happen, and that really gives me hope. And that's the other world.
Wonderful.
This is a really good ending.
It was in Portuguese or English?
I feel that we can have a small time to do, como diz, cochicho?
Conversation.
Gossips. Yeah, no,
Whispering.
Yeah. Yes. Because I feel that so much new ideas, and if we talk with a little,
that's a great
yes,
idea.
so I can turn to you.
Whispering.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Então, uns 5 minutinhos aqui.
Okay.
A gente pode até fazer uns cochichinhos e tomar um suquinho, 10 minutinhos, né? Que acho que dá uma aquecida pra gente devolver pra ele algumas coisas. Pode ser? Então a gente faz assim pra ele, assim, ó. Então, 10 minutinhos de cochicho e um lanchinho pra gente ainda dar uma devolutiva. O convite agora é em que lugar, que momento estamos hoje, né? O que podemos trazer para o Otto também incluir na sua colheita por esse mundo emergente. Então, está aberta a palavra.
Eu queria também falar uma coisa que ressoou muito do que ele falou, é a dificuldade de ter escala, né? A destruição ela é muito fácil, quer dizer, quando você destruir em escala é fácil, construir é mais lento e dá mais trabalho, e é um desafio grande. Eu acho que eu tenho muita angústia sobre esse assunto, né? Porque a consciência é algo complexo, porque é a consciência que permeia o todo para fazer uma diferença. E como que você transforma a consciência, já que ela tem tantos aspectos? E eu acho que os americanos são muito bons de gestão, e por isso tem tanta multinacional. Então, se a gente conseguisse ter essa capacidade de gestão de uma coisa maior, a pergunta é um pouco como, para não ser tão pequenininho, né, que nem vocês estão fazendo um movimento, como que expande, como que alavanca, como que produz para poder ter um impacto. Essa seria a minha preocupação.
Eu acho que além da questão da escala, que eu tinha pensado também, eu tenho me preocupado com uma outra dimensão, que é a dimensão temporal. Porque, como o Otto falou, ao mesmo tempo que vários de nós estão envolvidos em pequenas iniciativas locais de grande significado local, pequeno não é nada de diminuição, mas de âmbito mais localizado, setorializado, a gente não consegue muitas vezes as transformações sistêmicas de escala. E as transformações sistêmicas, muitas vezes, se não tem um tipping point, um ponto de ruptura, um ponto de transformação, levam muito tempo. E eu tenho a impressão que políticos, tomadores de decisão, e talvez eu não sou psicólogo, está na natureza humana a inércia e, portanto, faz parte. Veja, as negociações de clima agora na África do Sul. O fundamento são as mudanças graduais, as mudanças incrementais. Todos os diplomatas negociam com espírito de defesa e admitindo somente mudanças incrementais. E as mudanças incrementais talvez não são suficientes se a gente quiser resolver seriamente o problema de tantos injustiçados que tem no mundo. Eu só queria dar um outro número para o Otto, eu tenho usado muito. Um exemplo que eu acho que impacta de escala. de contato humano. Quando cai um avião e morrem 200, 300 pessoas, é um drama. É um drama para as famílias, é um drama na mídia, que persiste durante semanas. Morrem por dia o equivalente a 20 jumbos caindo de diarreia por água contaminada, especialmente no terceiro mundo. São 2.200.000 mortes por água contaminada por cocô. E ninguém fala nada disso. Então, além da escala e do tempo, eu acho que nós precisamos resgatar a dimensão da indignação humana para poder trabalhar tanto nas ações locais que são necessárias, mas também nas mudanças sistêmicas.
Eu queria só fazer uma consideração em relação a isso, que essa indignação ela não sobe até a pauta da mídia, né? A gente, até quem se lembra desse fim de semana e viu a capa da Veja, eu só a vejo de longe para não, né, sujar as mãos. Mas é impressionante a sua penetração e como essa pauta, ela, enquanto nós estamos aqui com efeito multiplicador de 2, né, ela está de 2.000, 3.000, que é inversamente proporcional a essa questão, né? Então, acho que uma questão, uma das questões básicas é como chegar na mídia, né, ou de alguma forma, e alterar essa pauta. Porque se a gente precisa de ganho de escala, não é por justa posição que a gente vai chegar lá. Então, as estratégias, todas alternativas, são super bem-vindas, mas acho que a gente precisa mais, né? Então, como envolver a comunicação, a mídia, o marketing, eu acho que isso é um nó que a gente poderia compartilhar, né?
Há 2 semanas atrás, eu dei uma palestra no Encontro Brasileiro de Jornalismo Ambiental, no Rio de Janeiro. Eu falei, bom, vai ter meia dúzia de gatos pingados, né? Assim, porque quem são os jornalistas ambientais? 1.200 se inscreveram. Quase 900 estavam lá assistindo. Era inacreditável o número de jornalistas focados em meio ambiente. E a conversa que rolou lá foi, isso não se traduz na mídia, isso não aparece no jornal, isso não está nas revistas. Cadê o trabalho de vocês, né? O que está acontecendo, né? Então isso é uma coisa muito chocante mesmo, né? Quer dizer, uma coisa tão importante acontecendo, tanta coisa acontecendo, e isso não se reflete de jeito algum na mídia, né? Também passo longe da capa da Veja, né? Que eu acho que pauta a gente de quais são as coisas que tem que falar e tudo mais, né? Então, nesse encontro, eu vi pessoas maravilhosas cobrindo coisas incríveis, viajando distâncias enormes e aquilo saindo numa notinha num lugar pequenininho e tal, né? Nós estamos até formando uma rede de jornalismo ambiental assim para tentar lançar alguma coisa. Eles estão bem organizados, só precisa começar a aparecer na mídia, né? Então acho que isso é uma coisa bem forte para a gente olhar. Eu acho que o próprio Otto poderia entender que assim está acontecendo o Código Florestal agora, nesse instante, hoje, no Senado sendo votado, e a maioria não está nem sabendo que o desastre, a autorização para desmatar está acontecendo aqui e a gente nem sabe. Então, como que a gente passa disso? Como é que a gente faz isso ir para a comunidade, né? Esses 2 mundos aí que nós estamos vivendo.
Bom, essa é uma pergunta que eu também, várias dessas perguntas eu convivo e cada vez com maior intensidade. E é muito bom quando a gente está numa roda de pessoas que a gente não precisa nem explicar muito, né? Mas a gente sabe que a gente faz parte de um mesmo todo, né? Intuitivamente, enfim, pelo sentimento. E às vezes quando a pessoa fala um pouquinho do que ela faz, a gente, opa, sabia que era da mesma tribo, né? E o que eu percebo é que tem muitos indícios de que muitas pessoas estão passando por essa transformação de consciência. Assim, eu acredito nisso plenamente, eu vejo isso acontecendo em tantos lugares, em várias classes sociais, no meu bairro, enfim. E eu acredito nisso. Eu não tenho como não acreditar nisso, porque se eu não acreditar, o que vai acontecer? Vai acreditar no quê? Então, eu acho que quando a gente fala assim, tem que envolver a mídia, tem que envolver o governo, tem que envolver as empresas, eu concordo, mas isso é consequência da gente envolver um outro elemento que está em todo lugar. O que está em todo lugar, que é o que pode dar escala? Qual que é o instrumento comum que nós todos temos para atuar no mundo? É gente, humano, ser humano. É o ser humano que a gente tem que envolver. A gente entende tão pouco do humano, a gente olha o humano e não consegue entender o que nem a gente é. A nossa autoimagem do que é ser humano está completamente em transição, né? Muitas pessoas passando por isso, a gente vê de várias formas. E eu acho que o que a gente está vivendo cada vez mais nessas manifestações várias aí, do Occupy, o próprio campanha da Marina, tantas outras que estão acontecendo, existe uma multidão, que eu costumo falar da multidão dispersa, né? A multidão é muito diferente da massa. A natureza da multidão é a natureza quase oposta da massa. A massa não tem um indivíduo, a massa segue um líder, uma ideia, e ela reproduz, né? Tem uma ideologia. A multidão é a massa com indivíduos. Então tem um espaço assim, verdade. Então é um outro tempo, né? Mas essa multidão de pessoas que vivem seu próprio processo de transformação, no seu tempo, na sua própria vida, está aí, está acontecendo. E o que me parece é que dessa multidão, né, está emergindo já o novo modelo. O modelo está caindo, muita gente desesperada vendo ele caindo, mas tem uma turma aí cada vez maior que olha para um outro modelo caindo e olha para um outro nascendo. Vem aqui, consome orgânico, vai lá e vai numa escola alternativa, vai fazer uma terapia para se conhecer.
Fica animado com a queda.
Fica animado, começa a se animar, olha só que bom, né? Aí começa a ver, vai no slow food, vai num restaurante que é engajado com várias questões e de repente começa a virar consultor e vai no The Hub. E não sei, tem toda uma economia nascendo. Uma economia, toda uma sociedade nascendo, e também tem toda uma política nascendo, isso e totalmente integrado. E tem pessoas que estão no velho sistemão, que estão despertando para isso. Aqui a gente tem várias pessoas que estão lá, em grandes empresas ou em governos, e a gente sabe de gente que está lá e que está conscientemente atuando nas brechas. Então, está acontecendo. O que eu acho que falta, eu poderia ficar aqui discorrendo esse otimismo por horas. Eu fico vendo isso de todos os dias, eu me ocupo com isso. O que eu acho que falta é a gente conseguir enxergar, vamos dizer, são várias micro-revoluções, várias transformações reais na prática e na teoria também, que estão acontecendo, mas que não ainda conseguem se enxergar como um todo. Então é como se a gente consegue ver aquele movimento, aquele acolá, ou até supor que existe essa multidão, que eu estou supondo ela. Eu estou vendo ela, mas não existe um olhar coletivo sobre si. Não existe. Recuperando Goethe, que você gosta do Goethe. O Goethe costuma dizer que o próprio... Ele costuma dizer... É porque ele vive em nós, ele continua vivo. Continua vivo. Essa foi boa. Deu até certo, né? Nosso amigo, poxa vida, um grande inspirador. Ele dizia que um acontecimento gera a sua própria teoria. Então, isso que está acontecendo está ainda existe um todo que está presente nessas várias partes e ele está criando sua própria teoriazinha, né? A gente hoje ouvi uma parte desse todo trazendo uma narrativa sobre esse todo que eu gostei muito. E aí fez várias sinapses com as nossas, cada um de nós está fazendo uma interpretação. A gente ainda não conseguiu olhar juntos esse todo. E eu acho que quando esse todo tiver o mínimo de conexões e conseguir se entender, na sua diversidade, na sua complexidade, aí emerge o novo modelo assim, com força total. No seu, né? É como a Marina costumava dizer na campanha, ela tinha certeza que tinha 20% dos votos. E a gente lá nos bastidores, e ela falou assim, e muita gente, um monte de gente aqui para provar. O povo da campanha desacreditando, já até pisando um pouco no freio, e ela lá. E deu 20 milhões, quase o dobro. Ela costumava falar de uma metáfora que é o fogo de Mutum, né? Fogo de Mutum, que é uma técnica...
Mutum é complicado.
Mutum, we don't know what's Mutum. It's a language from the Amazon. She's from the Amazon. Então, esse fogo de Mutum, que é esse fogo que você não vê, ele vai queimando por baixo da palha e de repente pega fogo. Então, assim como na campanha, continuo plenamente convicto de que ele está aí acontecendo no mundo todo e cada dia vendo mais. Mas a gente ainda tem que desenvolver entre nós a capacidade do diálogo. Então, aí você pode falar. Mas se a gente souber realmente observar, se escutar e ver o que está emergindo na nossa prática, a gente não tem nada que segure essa força, porque a gente vai ser tão potente, tão sedutor, num bom sentido, tão convincente como uma flor que chama as abelhinhas. Quando florescer esse todo, não tem que segure. E ele já assusta, porque quem está no sistema que está querendo controlar, tenta controlar e não consegue. Eu acho ótimo que a Veja está fazendo isso, porque olha só, eles estão tentando controlar uma coisa incontrolável. São sinais de... Bom, desculpa falar demais.
Tá lindo.
Obrigada, adorei.
É isso. Bom, então, já para terminar, então assim, acho que tem um poder... Sabe assim, existe um poder da multidão, e se a gente conseguir deixar o vazio emergir no diálogo, não tem nada que segure. Era isso. Tem...
Então, como foi legal, foi muito inspirador, eu queria pegar um pouco essa questão da multidão e uma coisa que eu tenho assim já na veia, né, que é a questão da internet, que há muitos anos eu estou nesse mundo. E da mídia, porque assim, existe a mídia tradicional e existe esse foguinho que está queimando, que nem todos estão vendo, mas quem já está vendo há muito tempo, que é o que está na internet. Todos esses movimentos, todas essas conexões, pessoas que conseguem se conversar em todas as partes do mundo e divulgar as coisas boas que estão fazendo. Então, há mais de 10 anos, né, mais de 10 que a gente já escolheu desconectar da grande mídia. Tipo, a gente não quer ficar conectado nisso, nem nossos filhos. Não vai entrar Jornal Nacional, aquelas coisas em casa, não vai. E aí a gente fez a opção de se conectar com as coisas boas que estão acontecendo, com todos esses movimentos. E isso faz uma diferença enorme, porque a nossa vida começa a mudar, e você começa a encontrar pessoas que justamente estão buscando. Então, também vejo todos esses movimentos, mas confesso que fico muito ansiosa e muito nervosa quando eu vejo ainda como são mundos desconectados. E eu também tenho essa pressa de que se conecte, de que aconteça alguma coisa mais rápido e em maior escala também.
Eu acho que temos uma semente aqui.
Eu queria voltar um pouquinho ao que o Rubens colocou e também o que o senhor colocou da questão da mídia e voltar ao ser humano, porque sou com você e não abro e estou nessa também juntinho e há mais tempo. Mas tem um pesquisador de mídia, Heinz Budmeier, da Universidade de Bremen, na Alemanha, e ele fez esse livrinho chamado Mídia e Violência. Ele traz uns números aqui que são estarrecedores. Uma criança ao fim do ensino médio passou 13 mil horas na sala de aula e 25 mil horas na frente da televisão, criança média americana. E ao final da primeira fase, a criança viu, nessa idade, 8 mil assassinatos e 100 mil atos de violência na televisão. 8 mil assassinatos, 100 mil atos de violência. 73% dos casos que ela viu, os criminosos permanecem impunes. 58% dos casos, as consequências dos atos violentos não são mostradas. O resultado líquido do ato violêncio. E os conflitos resolvidos sem violência são 4% dos casos.
Retratados na mídia.
Na mídia. E ele diz que na Alemanha é a mesma coisa, e a quantidade de tempo que as pessoas passam nisso. Então, um pouco assim, por que as pessoas não se indignam mais? Por que elas estão neutralizadas? Porque elas foram treinadas
Adormecerem.
a não reagir.
Adormecerem.
Então, eu acho que nós precisamos estar com essa consciência. E eu tenho feito alguns trabalhos lá na minha cidade, no Imbu, em que via internet eu consigo todos os jovens, todos. Eles entram, eles participam, porque é rápido, é indolor. Mas quando eu chamo esses jovens para ir a campo, para ir lá na parte pobre da cidade, ter contato corpo a corpo com aquelas pessoas que estão na condição de risco, eles simplesmente evaporam, porque eles não estão corajosos para enfrentar essa parte do mundo que você falou, do mundo velho. Então eu vejo hoje claramente acontecer um processo que na década de 80 havia uma pesquisadora na GV estudando a formação de 2 células da distribuição da sociedade. Quer dizer, a sociedade normalmente se distribui numa curva normal, que é uma célula só. Mas ela dizia que a tecnologia estava começando a promover uma separação de 2 grandes grupos sociais. E cada um dos grupos tem uma distribuição em forma de célula, e as células estão se afastando. Então tem esse grupo de mundo, que são as pessoas que se conectam e se falam e se encontram, e você aciona e todo mundo vai. E tem um outro grupo, que é o outro grupo que é talvez populosamente maior, mas em termos de barulho faz menos barulho, que é esse grupo ao qual a gente se reporta. 2 bilhões e meio de pessoas abaixo da linha da miséria, 2 milhões e meio de crianças morrendo por diarreia, etc, etc. Quer dizer, aí eu pergunto ao Otto, de toda a apresentação clara da questão da economia, da questão das relações sociais, onde está o indivíduo, onde está a pessoa? Quer dizer, quando a gente trabalha o U, a gente trabalha fundamentalmente o indivíduo, a pessoa. Onde é que está isso? Eu queria ter a sua fala, porque foi muito mais gostosa. Mas é algo que eu...
Eu vou dar um contraponto também. Eu faz tempo que eu não uso isso, mas eu tenho uma metáfora disso. Imagina que a gente é um pitbull, né? Imagina que a gente é um gatinho e vem um pitbull e ataca a gente. Né? Geralmente, qual é a primeira reação do gato? Né? Quando eu estou dando palestra, eu faço mais tempo. Agora eu vou dar a resposta já, porque a gente não vai pegar muito tempo da gente. Mas a primeira reação que o gato tem é, né? Bom, a primeira, na verdade, é tentar fugir, né? Tentar achar um muro, né? A primeira coisa é fugir. Se não consegue fugir, tem um muro, não consegue subir, o pitbull cercou, a segunda é reagir. Se ele conseguir reagir, o pitbull ainda foi lá e abocanhou o gato, a terceira reação que o gato tem é desmaiar. Ele colapsa e desmaia. É uma defesa biológica dos mamíferos, né? E tem uma pesquisadora inglesa que ela fala que, na verdade, é dos seres vivos. Então a gente pode considerar todos nós aqui gatinhos. A primeira coisa que tem um horror é fugir disso. Isso não existe, não vai. Né? Lembro logo agora, quando fiz aquele estradalhaço, né? Todo mundo fala, não é. Aí no dia seguinte já veja, é verdade, vai todo mundo morrer. Não? Aí você tem que enfrentar aquilo e falar, vamos tentar fazer, falar com os amigos, postar no Facebook, né? A veja na semana que vem, não adianta. Mesmo que você pare o carro, durante 50 anos o clima vai elevar e vai todo mundo morrer. Aí você fala, 50 anos vai dar certo? Se eu parar o carro, então o que eu faço? Eu durmo, né? Eu desmaio. Então amanhã eu tenho que ir para a escola, ligar as crianças. Então, me ligar para comer uma pizza, eu volto para a NG para fazer meu trabalhinho com as crianças, entregar leite. A gente dorme.
Entra no shopping para comprar sapato?
Exatamente. Né? Porque o problema é tão grande que eu não consigo reagir. Então, a grama, assim, tem alguns seres como nós que estão, a gente está meio erradinho, está mal funcionando mal, porque a gente não desmaia. Né? A gente biologicamente a gente não está funcionando bem, a gente tem uma anomalia, uma parte de nós. Então, a gente não desmaia. Mas geralmente é porque a gente não desmaia porque a dor de desmaiar e deixar é maior do que o medo de desmaiar e deixar é maior. Mas são bem poucas pessoas que têm essa resistência ou essa estupidez. Pode ser para os dois lados. Agora a gente precisa de muito mais gente, né? Então, o que é que precisa um gato? Né? Se você chegar, imagina que está lá o pitbull agarrado no gato, e você bate na cara do gato, levanta! Ele vai te matar! Aí o gato vai lá, ele abre o olhinho, abre o pitbull de novo, ele vai, né? Ele não é besta, né? Ele vai levantar naturalmente. Se alguém puxar o pitbull, amarrar o pitbull e falar, agora levanta, ele vai olhar, não é besta, ele vai para a vida dele. Então eu fico sempre imaginando qual é o convite que a gente pode fazer para essas pessoas que garanta que ela possa acordar e reagir.
Uma delas é prender o pitbull.
Uma delas é prender o pitbull, pode ser. Né? Então, quais são os convites que a gente pode fazer para isso? E eu tenho muito buscado, eu gosto assim, eu fui me reportar duas coisas que me chamam a atenção. Gandhi, né? Que acho que tem que ser muito mais estudado na escola, mas enfim, o que é que ele fez? Como é que ele conseguiu fazer milhões de indianos sem guerra, sem violência, e libertar e fazer a Inglaterra ir embora, sem botar a mão em armas? Ele fala isso, né? Ele convidou alguma coisa que era viva nas pessoas, ninguém quer lutar, ninguém quer brigar, ninguém quer se evitar o outro, em essência, mesmo odiando os ingleses, e ele potencializou isso e deu o que deu em cadeia. Né? Outro cara que eu adoro é o cara da Vida é Bela, o Benigno, né? Que é aquele filme, assim, não foi verdade, mas podia ser. Né? Se eu tivesse que viver uma situação daquela, eu vou prender esse cara e chamar as pessoas para dançar, para brincar. Né? Então, isso pode acordar pessoas, né? Para vir para um outro mundo, mesmo no meio do maior horror. Aliás, tem várias histórias reais similares àquilo, né? No nazismo. E o terceiro que eu gosto bastante é o flautista de Hamelin. Aquela história, que pena que é só uma história, né? Que é chamando as pessoas encantadas a salvar as crianças da cidade, tirar os ratos da cidade. Então, assim, se a gente quiser colocar muito mais gente junto com a gente, né? Junto com alguns, dizem que é de 3 a 8% da população são as pessoas que não dormem, né? que não sabem desmaiar quando o gato vem, devia saber. A gente precisa de muito mais gente. Que qualidade de convite é esse, né? Encantado pode ser esse para as pessoas verem. Né? Tem muitos, né? Eu escolho brincar, quando as pessoas vão brincar, né? E é uma coisa que não é ingênua, porque quando as pessoas vêm para brincar, elas vêm com muito poder. Né? Por mais que eu possa ter 50 anos de educação dizendo você não é, você não merece, você não pertence, você não é criativo, você é um trabalhador, assim que eu libero você para brincar, sem educação, as pessoas naturalmente sabem brincar. Sabe dançar, sabe ser empreendedora, sabe buscar coisas, né? Então, o que é isso que pode ser mais poderoso do que 50 anos ou 300 anos de educação para você não ser? Né? Então, eu fico imaginando quais são os pontos da nossa sociedade. O Otto citou essa história do que ambientes... Eu queria retomar a pergunta dele, eu não anotei, vou pagar o preço para isso. Mas que ambientes a gente precisa gerar, que ambiente a gente pode gerar de aprendizagem, de educação e de aprendizagem, em que esses processos podem ser reavivados. Né? Eu tenho certeza que não é só o game é minha preferência, que eu adoro brincar. Mas que ambientes são esses que, encantados, fazem as pessoas entrar, por exemplo, numa situação de catástrofe, né? Como se fosse o nazismo, como foi como a gente fez em Santa Catarina, e todo mundo vira empreendedor e sem dinheiro. Né? Então eu fico pensando que lugares na sociedade, na nossa história, já existem, que nós somos esses seres poderosos que a gente quer ver. E todo mundo é. Então, uma das áreas que eu quero investigar é essa. Que lugares que a gente já é isso, que foi, para mim, o que Gandhi viu em todos os indianos, naquela massa inteira. E aí criou estratégias fantásticas para isso, sem internet, né? Aquela marcha dele para ir para o sol, que ele deu a volta na ilha inteira, e o sol era só aqui, ele deu a marcha inteira, e fosse falando cada tribo, cada aldeia, tem um monte de estratégia que a gente pode desenhar. Mas eu quero saber como é que a gente traz esse, sabe, 6 bilhões e meio de pessoas que não estão satisfeitas com esse jogo, e não querem entrar no jogo, que a gente está entrando no jogo, para segurar o Rottweiler e o Rottweiler brigando com a gente.
Queria só falar uma coisinha. A gente tem uma pequena ONG de voluntários. Ela não é organizada de maneira nenhuma. É uma juntada de pessoas, que é o coletivo Curupira. E a gente se junta para achar ruim e para procurar caminhos também. Mas uma coisa que tem nos mobilizado contra essa história da derrubada do Código Florestal, etc., é começar a pensar em que o melhor do Brasil é o povo e a natureza. E que se a gente juntar, ninguém segura. É isso que tem movido a gente para justamente tentar buscar os melhores potenciais não realizados, né? Que é a criatividade que é realizada, mas não tem escala, e a natureza que é, não é tratada como espezinhada. Se a gente conseguir aprender uns com os outros, e isso está nos movendo, essa gana em cima desse slogan.
Como é que é o nome do grupo mesmo?
Coletivo Curupira. Lourdes é uma sócia fundadora.
Sim, eu sou Curupira. Eu queria agregar ainda todas essas ideias, mais um flash para juntar no tabuleiro de coisas que a gente vai levantando, e que me inspira muito a fala de Edgar. A capacidade da gente sonhar. Eu acho que se a gente pudesse estimular que as pessoas sonhassem com a mudança, sonhar com dias melhores, sonhar com a capacidade de transformar o social, a gente conseguiria alcançar, talvez fazer um pouco dessa... eu trabalho com comunidades desde que eu me conheço por gente. Meu pai foi um líder comunitário e eu aprendi muito das coisas que eu sei hoje com ele, de fazer junto e tal. Mas tinha um sonho. Aquelas pessoas que estavam juntas, elas conseguiam fazer coisas porque elas tinham um sonho de mudar, de melhoria, né? Era um sonho de ter um bairro melhor, era um sonho de ter uma casa melhor. E as pessoas se juntavam em função disso, né? E quando eu penso nessa coisa do sonho, eu consigo ver nos grupos que trabalho que as pessoas sonham com dias melhores, né? Mas talvez a gente não tenha uma nação que tenha um sonho, né? Qual é o sonho de nação que a gente tem, né? A gente pode dizer que a nossa nação tem um sonho único, né? É ainda fragmentado em função esses sonhos diferentes em função, talvez para usar um pouco a linguagem do Milton Santos, né? Do andar de cima e do andar de baixo, são sonhos diferentes, porque somos Brasis diferentes, né? A gente tem várias realidades de Brasil. E talvez o Brasil que esteja lá na base tenha sonhos que é diferente de outros Brasis, né? Enfim, também não tem resposta. Como é que a gente estimula o sonho para a gente correr atrás, né? Tem um autor, o Augusto de Franco, ele define a questão do capital humano como a capacidade das pessoas sonharem e correrem atrás do sonho. Não é esperar que ninguém dê alguma coisa, mas eu faço o meu sonho e eu sou capaz de me levantar e correr atrás dele, alcançar o meu sonho.
Olha, isso é científico, eu só queria pensar, porque ressoa em mim muito o que você disse. Nós precisamos de um choque de sonhos, né? Uma revolução utópica, principalmente porque no pós-guerra nós passamos a acreditar na bomba, não é? E no muro, e no inimigo. Então somos uma sociedade pós-guerra atordoada pelo medo. E todo o sistema cultural, econômico, nos fortalece esse medo, né? Para que sejamos submissos ao poder, do esvaziamento desse poder, dessa força que nós temos no consumo e no poder do ter alguma coisa, né? E não no ser. Mas é científico, porque tem um estudo realizado por um um holandês, em 1952, depois da guerra. Ele fez um estudo macro-histórico de todas as civilizações e queria entender, né, por que esse medo imperava, né, nesse momento. E ele chegou à conclusão, nesse estudo, de que as sociedades que feneceram, que acabaram, foram aquelas que não tinham sonhos, aquelas que não tinham imagens de futuro positivas. E aquelas que floresceram foram as que caminhavam em busca dos sonhos. Então isso não é bobagem, isso não é, na verdade, não é poesia, isso é ciência. Então vamos trazer essa ciência dos sonhos, né? Fazer com que a gente salve essa cultura. O Brasil, que um país foi cunhado pelo país do futuro, que ele faça acontecer esse destino que lhe trouxeram, né? Então, as escolas, as instituições, as ONGs, façam as pessoas se reunirem em torno dos sonhos. Então, assim, eu faço um paranzão aí com você nessa proposta. É preciso, sim, criar imagens positivas de futuros compartilhados. Sem isso, a gente não vai prosperar. E uma outra coisa que eu queria trazer é a urgência de ingressarmos no meio ambiente interior. Nós temos falado nesse século no meio ambiente exterior. Nós somos seres, os únicos que podemos navegar nesse meio ambiente interno. Ele é tão mal conhecido, ele é tão pouco explorado. É urgente que a gente se conheça como está o nosso meio ambiente interior. E para que a gente possa entender por que a gente faz o que faz ou por que a gente não faz o que deveria fazer. E sair dessa matrix da obediência de alguma coisa que a gente nem sabe o que é. E mais uma terceira coisa que é absolutamente estarrecedora. Saiu um estudo recente na Suíça, uma tese de doutorado que foi publicada recentemente, um estudo matemático que indica que 85% do poder econômico no mundo hoje e todas as decisões relacionadas a esse poder estão nas mãos de 65 megacorporações financeiras, que controlam outros grupos de megas empresas. Então, eu não sei explicar cientificamente isso, mas está tudo na internet. Tá tudo. Então,
eles fizeram a rede, então.
Hã?
Eles fizeram a rede.
Eles fizeram a rede. Exatamente. Então, é como a gente quebrar essa cortina de ferro, né, do século XXI, que está no poder das empresas. Qual vai ser a grande revolução? A grande revolução vai ser a revolução anticorporativa, a revolução anti-empresarial, a revolução emergente. Essa é a grande revolução. É isso.
Mas ela não terminou, né? Terminou?
Eu podia falar o resto da noite, mas eu deixo assim.
Eu peguei o laço que você me deu.
Desculpa. Eu estou contemplada.
Posso colocar um adendo bem quietinho, micro? De repente a ciência e a poesia e o sonho têm o mesmo valor. Né?
Opa, e como? Convergentes, né?
Era bem um adendo.
Se a gente não traz uma causa, eu acho que a gente não se move. Eu acho que esse é o X da questão. Uma causa interior, uma causa que faça sentido o seu existir. Que você possa acordar de manhã e seu dia fazer sentido. E você passar o dia tendo a sensação de que cada minuto que você viveu é um minuto válido. Eu acho que isso é o que me toca, o que você falou. E é isso.
Well, it was really fascinating listening to you, and I thought the conversation really opened up a whole other space, and we were kind of moving back and forth kind of between these two spaces, and the way I experienced that is that we and I am living in two different worlds. Kind of, it's one world that's dying, and it's another world that's kind of in the process of being born. And so I am experiencing, and I think there's also like a personal dimension to that. And I'm experiencing, which is a personal choice point, where exactly you want to position your own biography, your own life, your own work. And what I'm experiencing is that I'm positioning myself in between. It's being trying to be primarily part of the world that's being born, and yet consciously venturing out also into the other world. So in an attempt to be bilingual rather than monolingual. And that tension is not always pleasant. And it's sometimes it feels like it's you're torn. And yet I think it has to do with our present moment that we are living in collectively. And I also, when we listen into, so we have these different examples, kind of the where we experience kind of the arrival, the coming into being of the future, kind of tapping into that space, and then kind of when we you know, hide or fight against the what was it, the pit bull, or so there is so we deal with both of these realities, and for me, what separates these different stories is really what I have tried to also describe earlier. I wasn't really focusing on that tonight, as the essence of Theory U, which is that the results that we create, which can be summarized in the following sentence, the results, the quality of results that we create in any kind of social group or system is a function of the quality of awareness that we operate from. So, and what is awareness? It's the kind of the inner place from that I'm operating. So shifting that inner place is the leverage point from which, you know, that determines whether I'm holding on to the past or become, you know, become part of the story of the emerging future. And so awareness and individual awareness is one, but there is another one that we, I think, saw tonight and that we heard exemplified, and that's language. It's the way we talk, the way we communicate, and that was kind of our entry point. So, and I would say in our kind of social change work, there are 4 types of languages that belong kind of, that correspond with the 4 levels kind of that I try to describe in Theory U. One is them to them, right? That's kind of, that's kind of big media, right? Politicians talking to each other, right? It's them to them, it's like blah, 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 more of the same, right? That's level 1. Second level is us to them, right? So how, you know, the question we started with, how can we help other people to see this movement, right? That is a sentence from the second world, us to them. We communicate something to a receiver who is different from us. And, you know, that's of course, you know, how much of the NGO world is constructed, right? So we kind of target, we communicate, and it is okay. I mean, sometimes we need it, particularly if we want to nail certain things, you know, that are going on in the shadow areas that need to be, but it has its limitation. And the third level is us to us, or we to we, which is kind of what we talked about earlier, and which is reframing the same issue. So it's not I try to communicate to some eggheads kind of what our movement is about. I do what Gandhi did. What did Gandhi do? He always saw, he never fought against people. It was always about transforming structure. So that means you're addressing not the current self in the other, but kind of the potential higher awareness in the other. That's kind of what you're trying to address. So you need to think about their role, the role of the oppressor in the new system. Otherwise, you're not complete. That's the we to we. So you come with a more generous we, so the smaller we to the bigger we, that, you know, includes the other stakeholders or the counterparts that in their own definition probably still think about us versus them. So that's the we to we, and I think that's kind of the first challenge that we have as a movement, you know, move from the us to them to we, because yes, it creates a different discourse, and the discourse creates a different awareness, and that kind of enacts a different reality. And the last one, I don't know how to call it, but the fourth one, but you could say that's me to we. And what I mean with me to we is that it transforms your own self, right? So the main definition of the last one really is that you are no longer the same person, kind of that it's kind of the me is changing, but also the we is changing. And where kind of you connect with that dying and being born within yourself. So there's kind of something going out of the window and something else is coming in.
And Gandhi was precisely that, because he was always exposing, he would never hide what was happening with him. And he was working within himself publicly. So I would really see that it makes sense in the Gandhi here too.
Interesting, yeah, you're right. Yeah. And you know, it does involve a politic, right, where the self shows more up, and which is exactly what we see in the social media, which we exactly what we see in kind of that original speech that sparked the Arab Spring. It is actually that kind of clip, kind of that posting, is actually a great example of that. Kind of starting with the vulnerability of the me, which opens up a new we, or evokes, invites into. And that's yeah, that's where the challenge is, but also the future. And
can I make a question then for you, just quick? It's just like really to wrap with what you just said. It's just how you started telling about your story, and how is this moment for you? How are you here now? I would like to listen if you could share a bit.
well, I feel thankful being a part of the circle. I also feel somehow I arrived today from Bali, actually, from Indonesia, and had some amazing experiences, saw some local examples of social transformation, which were just so what I felt there, to some degree I also feel here, like just as a social quality or presence. I also you know, sitting here kind of in terms of the dying and being born, I think I have been going through a cycle myself where I have been, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier, I have been going through a period of my life where I spend a lot of time in the world of larger institutions. And I'm entering a period kind of where I more intentionally return to the roots. And it's not an either or, but it's really strengthening that, doing it more intentionally. And that's what I feel here, and that's what's emerging.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Welcome.
Yeah.
There is something in your speech that intrigues me a lot, which has to do with the two worlds that you say you live in between. One is this world, where it's very subjective, very spiritual, very abstract.
Subtle, not abstract. It's subtle.
Subtle, precisely, subtle. And you also say you live in a world of the large organizations, large corporations. But your language doesn't belong to neither of these worlds. You work with categories such as capitalism. Your proposal is to transform capitalism, which is not necessarily the way these people communicate. I've been here for 2 years in this city, working with different groups, working in politics, and I have never heard anyone addressing to capitalism. They address to change in other terms. They address to change in a less abstract level of thinking, more corporate-like. You don't seem to address the world or the changes that you want to suggest to the world. Actually, you don't suggest much. You ask questions, which I think it's a very good way of addressing reality. You made very few affirmations. How do you reconcile these actually 3 approaches that you have brought here tonight? You actually work and you say you want to address and to be more to be in closer contact with this kind of environment, with this kind of people who are here, but you also say that you work in large organizations and you actually work with very classical categories, which is not common to neither of these worlds. How do you deal with those things?
I don't know. If I would knew, the book would be already done. So I completely agree with all your observations. And that's exactly why I'm doing it, because those tend to be completely separate communities, right? You have, the awareness-driven change community, right? Then you have the big institutional universe, and that's kind of, and then you have like the critical discourse, the people who talk about capitalism, all these, so about the bigger systems changes, and yet usually apply very old categories. And it's like that's kind of a very small group because you tend to observe that the moment you do that, that doesn't make you more popular among nobody really, particularly not funders and so on. And
Although it's more precise.
What's that?
Although it's more precise.
Well, so what I basically try, yet, if it is true that the one of the big themes of the next decade or 2 will be that transformation, right? We need to have a conversation about that. And we cannot afford to leave that conversation to those who only muddle through, which is staying in the status quo, which is the big systems world, who only apply old ideological categories, that are devoid of reality, which is kind of the old transforming capitalism discourse, or kind of who only kind of think small, and kind of it's all about individual right? It's all about individual awareness, and that's all what's real. So that's, you know, we know there's, for each of these, there is a certain legitimacy, and yet today we see much more, and in this decade we'll see much more of the limitations if we do not succeed in bringing this together. I try to bring it together, and I cannot say that it's particularly successful. So I had an interesting experience, in fact. I was invited to the World Economic Forum in Davos earlier this year. 3 presentations, so 3 events, 3 times very different reaction. The first one, multi-stakeholder dialogue, and that's exactly kind of your big institution work, right? So yeah, you need to involve all the stakeholders, and multi-stakeholder innovation work, right? So there's like, that was 10 years ago, it was something new. Now everyone says exactly, and that's where the problem is. So no resistance, right? Second, then the second session was on transforming capitalism. Well, I tell you, I mean, if you want to have like a, so a very different reaction. Now, not from everyone, but you know, the banking community is not amused, right? See these things being discussed and put out into the open, and so there was you could feel that was a different reaction. Then the third one was mindful leadership, right? Basically doing a meditation practice, right? And very much to my surprise, that was a total connect. That was kind of oversubscribed instantly, and you know, complete connect. Of course, it's self-selected. Oh, you end up, of course, only with these people who are interested in that, not with the others. But there are plenty of those, so that's like, it gives you, it's pointing to these different worlds, and it shows you where we are, right? Multi-stakeholder, no problem, right? That mindfulness dimension of leadership. Even there, you have more and more people becoming aware of that, right? And you know, it happens. If it happens at a business school, which is kind of the home base of cynicism, you could say, then it happens in many other places. But then this kind of larger system, the transforming capitalism topic, that was a much more difficult response you get. And that's just where we are. Yet, I think we cannot afford, you know, to ignore that. I think that's exactly the reason why we need to focus on it more, so that the next time, you know, this 2008 moment, kind of, which is the, you know, a moment kind of where something new could happen, kind of, so some of these structures could form in a new way, happens. We are better prepared. I think that's our job, and so we need to think it through. We need to run practical experiments on a small scale, learning by doing, and then kind of connect the dots.
Vamos para brinde final. Quem não está com o copo, por favor, segue. Quem está fora da roda, venha para dentro da roda.